It's time for the Unofficial 40. Soonerscoop.com's very official recruiting podcast featuring Soonerscoop.com recruiting publisher Josh McCuistion. Get your recruiting fix from the leader in Sooner recruiting. It's the Unofficial 40 with your hosts, Soonerscoop.com publishers Carey Murdoch and Josh McCuistion.
All right, welcome back. It is another edition of the Unofficial 40 where we're out of our safe space because we're being joined by John Shinn, who has been helping to cover with spring football for us, who is in studio. And John, I'll extend the courtesy to you first and welcome you to the show.
Good to be here. Had nothing else to do on a Friday afternoon.
That's right. Except, well, we're going to talk about what you could be doing is going to the medieval fair, but Eddie Radosevich is here. Eddie?
A staple of Norman.
Yes.
Okay, hold it, because we have plenty to talk about with medieval fair. Josh McCuistion, who I'm sure loves to dress up in, what do they call that metal stuff? Chain link?
Chainmail?
Chain link? Or is it chainmail armor?
Chainmail. Mm-hmm.
You talk about it like you're an expert, Josh.
I did say that like I knew what I was talking about. I just kind of know what that's called, and I don't really know why I know what that's called.
Are you also a pedophile like most of those people out there?
I have never been. You know who is a big fan of the medieval fair is one Tiffany McCuistion. She rather enjoys those festivals.
But she doesn't want to dress up, right?
No, she's not a dress-up girl. She likes to go and watch all the people who have.
Now it is. John had said that he was coming over here, and he has to go by that way to get over to my house / the studio. And he said traffic was terrible. Did you see any of the losers out there?
Yeah. I mean, it looked like it was more Kids' Day right now.
Uh-huh.
But, then you see your first guy in a wizard outfit, and then you're... my goal before the weekend is up is to see the guy in the armor, pumping gas and smoking a cigarette at 7-Eleven over by Lloyd Noble.
Here's my thing, shouldn't you have to have a check-in station where people can see that you're not a registered sex offender when you go? Because it is a mix of kids and older people who like to dress up in fantasy garb, or as I like to call them, pedophiles.
Well, I'm more worried about the guy carrying the 6-foot-long sword.
Yeah,
that guy makes me nervous.
He's going to hurt himself.
Yeah, I feel like he hasn't been trained adequately with that sword.
There has to be a clear division of people that are doing that because it's somehow, some way they're getting paid to be there, and then the other people that really are there just because of.
But
they
and the
like
thing
to
is,
do
it's it's only old people, because if they're younger people, they're into that LARPing or whatever that stuff is.
What's that? What is
LARPing?
that?
Live action role playing?
Oh my god!
Like role models.
Like role models.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Have you seen role models?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, that's what that's called, is LARPing. But
Now,
so if you're younger and you like medieval times, you just run around and hit people with a styrofoam sword. You don't need to go to medieval fairs where kids are just there to laugh at you while you eat your turkey leg.
You wonder how much of that is just 12-year-olds looking at some.
Oh, it totally is. I had nieces who are now beyond. Well, actually, one's in high school still. She'll probably be out there with her friends just looking at the freaks. Kids in Norman, they're kind of advanced. They're kind of like Edmond kids. I mean, they're doing a lot of coke. And they're smoking some weed, and they like to go out and just laugh at the chainmail wearing freak shows.
I might need to drop over there after this.
You gonna scam some chicks?
Maybe.
Did you just narc your niece really hard?
No, my nieces would never be sniffing the coke.
I'm just saying. I mean, there was.
I'm just saying, kids in Norman are insane. Kids in Norman are insane. I mean, Eddie knows this.
Yeah, they are.
Shinn knows this. He lives here. Those little bastards are running loose everywhere.
It's really interesting to
I'm surprised they've been able to build these schools the last few years and they haven't been burnt down yet.
Well, they're rebuilding one. I mean, if you ever go down Main Street, they're practically rebuilding Norman High School. The medieval fair during college was always a must do on a Friday like today. It's nice out.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Go have a beer, do whatever, get a turkey leg. it's an interesting collection of people, though.
By the way, Eddie is going to the Texas Tech Oklahoma baseball game tonight. We've got Rivals Camp coming up this weekend in Dallas. But I had a question for Eddie, and also John Shinn has covered OU baseball for a long time. Covered a lot of coaches, and a coach I want to talk about here, like Tim Tadlock is the coach of Texas Tech. Were Sonny and Tim on good? Because a lot of coaches didn't get along with Sonny.
It seemed like they were. I mean, Tadlock, when he left, it was to be assistant coach, but Kirby Holcutt had said, "Here, come here, be an assistant for a year. I'm going to fire this guy, and you're going to be head coach." So it was
kind of like a coach in waiting kind of
exactly. And I mean,
but if you call it that, you're doomed to failure.
Sonny wasn't happy when it happened. I definitely remember that, but I don't think he never blamed Tadlock for taking that job because everybody fully understood what it
Would
was.
Sonny dare just show up at the stadium and watch the game?
If he does, I'll go down and watch the game with him for an inning. That would be awesome. I
think he follows all of us on Twitter. So.
Yeah. If Sonny's there, though, it might be because he's there to attack Texas Tech pitching coach Ray Hayward.
Oh, is Ray Hayward their pitching coach?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And has done a really good job there. But yeah, I mean, that was right when I started covering OU baseball. Was 2004 was that year where Sonny came back. Larry Koshell's still the head coach. Hayward's the pitching coach, and those two were
oil and
ready
water.
to go to blows twice a week.
Jeez.
And that was just that baseball program. You want to talk about being a soap opera?
My favorite story ever is Bill Mosiello just ripping off his jersey and walking home from, was it Waco where they were?
Yes, and Bill Mosiello is now the
very successful
lead assistant at TCU.
He's very successful at TCU.
I don't think I've ever heard this story. What happened?
You remember the story, right?
Yeah, I wasn't covering him yet, but I remember Coach Shell telling me the story. He and Mosiello got into it in the dugout in Waco, like the second inning of a game on like Saturday. And Mosiello just leaves. Just walks down the street, walks back to the hotel.
In full uniform.
Yeah. And then you remember Russell Raley?
Yes.
Played for
him. For Coach
Raley told me this story. Mosiello goes and gets a job somewhere in the Yankees organization.
I remember that, yeah.
Did the exact same thing. So, I mean,
that's his move.
The guy is a hell of a hitting coach, a hell of a recruiter. It also has a hell of a short fuse.
That is awesome.
Well, I'm telling you, if you Facebook Live, if Sonny Galloway is, I bet he'd do an interview right in the middle of the game.
Oh, I guarantee you he would.
Especially if Texas Tech is winning.
Yeah, absolutely. He might be with the Texas Tech cheering section if that happens. You
just have to stay away from Ray Hayward's wife.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of Oklahoma ties on that Texas Tech staff. Joe Hughes is director of baseball ops. He played for OU, I guess 10 years ago or so. And then I don't know if you want to mess with anybody named J-Bod Thomas. He's their recruiting coordinator and supposed to be one of the more respected guys in the country. Which,
by the way, Pete Hughes, it looks like he's got things turned around this year. But man, if Texas Tech comes in here and whips them up and down, and you look across that diamond, and it's an Oklahoma bred staff, and I mean that program is really doing well right now.
Yeah, but anytime a fan's ever asked me, the one thing I know about Tech is when they sign up a coach, they put these god awful buyouts if you want to go to another Big 12 school.
Yeah.
And the other deal is Tim Tadlock went to Tech. He is a West Texas guy.
That's true. Yeah.
That's where he wants.
Well, I'm not saying about stealing, just saying. You had these guys in place here, and they could have been a part of this program, but it got blown up. And Sonny's probably as much to blame for that as anybody.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I mean, Auburn's still paying him. I mean,
and he lives like in Blanchard. I've heard.
Yeah, I think so. I think his son actually.
I saw him tweeting about his son the other day, something about him, or showing a picture of him or something.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, there's a little baseball talk for you. That's all you're going to get. Just check out the board tonight, and we'll, I'm sure, keep track throughout the weekend. But Rivals Camp, I wanted to get to that real quick before we get to football so we don't bore Josh to death. So, Josh, you're going to get to talk now. Big news, though, today on Scott Pagano that we've confirmed, Josh.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to sound like I'm the one that had this news. I mean, this is your show, but really, obviously, Scott Pagano, the Clemson grad transfer, big news for Oklahoma to just get him here because there was news earlier this week that he wasn't going to make it, and then he was on again. So there's been a lot of back and forth about that. But I mean, for those that aren't familiar with him, this is a guy that comes in and day one as part of Oklahoma's two deep on the inside with all the needs they have there. He's a near perfect fit for them from an experience standpoint and just being a quality player.
It's interesting that, I guess it's just kind of the times of recruiting, Josh, and that Pagano on Monday or Tuesday, I think, said that he wasn't going to come, and then all of a sudden Bob's picking him up at the airport. I mean, it seems like you can never, and especially, I guess he's kind of treating this almost like a senior in high school, taking visits and getting out there to see different places. And I don't know, it just seems odd to me, I guess, is the point of it.
I'm trying to figure out what Scott Pagano wants. I mean, like, he doesn't want to win a championship. He just did that a year ago. Am I right? And Shinn brought this up before the show started. Like, if he's that good, why not just go to the NFL? I mean, I'm sure maybe. I can't believe that it's because he really wants to get a master's.
No, we've never met the grad transfer who's looking for a master's, and I don't think we ever will.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I was thinking these same things when he first declared, and I was like, well, maybe he's looking for a certain type of graduate school or something. And it's like, I wonder if OU has it. But let's face it, there's never been a kid like that I've heard of that's made a decision based on if you have the right type of grad school.
That's why Jeff Badett, his comments. Bidet? What? How do you say it? Bidet.
I think it's Bidet.
It's Bidet.
I think it's Bidet.
That's why his comments on not being really interested in classes, maybe one of the most all-time quotes for a graduate
You
transfer.
don't have to be. I think you literally have to enroll in 3
you
hours.
play the one semester.
Yeah. I mean, I know people who are in charge of graduate schools detest it, but I mean,
But I don't think there's an NCAA rule that says the APR is,
No, it doesn't affect it at all.
There's no progress towards your degree when you're a graduate student.
It's beautiful that you can do something like that, and then the NCAA gets pissed off about other stuff. That's just meaningless.
It's the college football version of the one and done. I mean, it's the same concept. Like, you're not really worried about school. You just have to do the basics, and then you're on to the next thing anyway.
But like Shinn said, who is this really hurting? If these guys were really that good, they would just graduate and then go pro. They'd go to the draft. Which, I mean, I think Scott Pagano's good. Is he an All-American? No.
But I mean, I thought there was, and it's going to sound funny because of the people listening to this are still pissed at this guy. But Mike Farrell had a pretty good story the other day where he's talking about how there's all this fuss over these grad transfers, like the guy that left LSU, the quarterback that's now going to North Carolina. I'm going to blank on his name.
Brandon Harris.
Yeah. Like, at what point was Brandon Harris a guy that you're like, boy, you need him on your team? Like, that's a guy that's going to fill in for Mitch Trubisky? No. Like, it's just like these guys leave a big program and then all of a sudden they're better players than what is clearly on tape.
We were talking, by the way, somebody put up a drinking game for our podcast. I'm gonna have it where everybody drinks.
I thought you were looking up at it like a
No, I'm looking up in the air. I don't have it posted on the wall. Somebody said you have to take a drink every time I mention that I'm in radio. But on the show this morning, we were talking to our OSU practice report guy, Mark Cooper from the Tulsa World, and he was talking about how much buzz there is there. Is it Tyler Johnson? Is that the receiver that went to OSU from LSU?
Yeah.
Tyron
Johnson. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about how unbelievable he is and this and that. And I thought to myself, like, yeah, but when has LSU ever been good on offense? Like, and I know Odell Beckham is, one of the best receivers in the NFL. And if there's anybody that's going to suck at LSU or be anybody that you can give a pass to for not doing well in LSU's offense, it's probably the receiver. But like a quarterback, I mean, I would never be excited about getting an LSU quarterback ever.
No, I'd never be excited about a guy who's not playing where he's at.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the bottom line with a lot. I mean, the The Badette guy? Yeah, I mean, it looked like one of Kentucky's best receivers last year. But you know, if you think this guy is truly a difference maker, you're thinking about an NFL player, and he could have just graduated and gone in the draft, and he chose not to.
Yeah. Which is, Geno Lewis is the same way. I mean, he wasn't a surefire NFL guy.
I think just in the fact that you're getting a guy that, I mean, it certainly is going to help OU, won't it? Bringing in a guy like that.
Yeah, I mean, they've only got 4 defensive tackles.
I mean, is this a situation that he could start from day one?
I think he's better right now than Devontae Lampkin and Q Overton.
Yeah, it sounds like Lampkin, just kind of basing off of what Mike Stoops has said. It sounds like he needs to spend some time in the workout room.
Yeah, it's not. There's no overwhelming praise for Devontae Lampkin.
Him and Ricky DeBerry, I guess.
Ricky
How much
DeBerry
do you think of that is psychological?
With
Lampkin, because he's always been super talented. That's always been there. But lazy has always been a problem for him. So, like, even if he's getting to the place they want him to be at, how much do you think they're like, we're not going to praise him until we're to the finish line? Like, we know, you know, come season, he's going to be ready to go for us.
I think there could be a little bit of that, Josh.
I don't think there is because
because,
and the reason I say that is not even his teammates are like, oh, you should see Devontae.
Yeah.
He's looking really good. Like his teammates those will be guys that would want you to know that he's, you know, doing well. But you don't. I mean, I wasn't with Gallimore the entire time. I don't know if you guys were. Eddie, I think you were for quite a while. I don't remember him. When I talked to him, he was praising Armani Bledsoe. He was praising. I'm trying to think the guys that he really talked about. But I mean, he didn't bring up Devontae Lampkin at all.
When I was over there, he was just talking about his relationship with Calvin Thibodeau, and I think we put it up on the board, and just that sounds like, you know, I don't think there's anybody that's not bought in on the defensive line. It's certainly a group that loves their coach as he enters his second year, and I think if he can just – a lot of the board heat will slow down once he gets a couple DT commitments that are, I guess, board approval.
But the other deal about Lampkin was, what was the first game he played in last year?
I want to say Ohio State he played a little bit, maybe.
No, he had that suspension, yeah.
I think it was Texas Tech.
Oh, he had that 6-game suspension, didn't he?
I think Tech was the first game that he
But
traveled.
I remember the first time he steps on the field, all of a sudden you look up and here's his pocket collapsing, which you hadn't really seen it all season.
You're right.
So.
You're right. I mean, he's one of these guys, you know, laziness, not practicing well is a thing. But Shinn's right. He's got talent when he comes into the game.
And
now, can he do that for 4 or 5 plays in a row?
And the other deal is if you still want to play some 3-4 defense, you need this big clogging nose tackle to do it.
Yeah.
And he is perfectly built for that.
He looks like he has talent. But I'll say this, before the season last year, just the way he was in preseason camp, there were kind of whispers that they were thinking about moving him to the offensive line. That was before they realized that Ben Powers was as good as he was. So, but no, I mean, back to Scott Pagano, I mean, that would be huge, not only from just a talent standpoint, but a depth standpoint, because they just don't have enough guys.
Well, and, you know, you need, in this day and age, you realistically need 7 guys. I mean, in order to be effective like that against just about anybody. So especially
when you're getting into those Tech games like last year.
Yeah, they're Tech, or it sounds like Baylor's not going to be doing that anymore.
No,
Oklahoma State's going to have the capability of doing it, and yeah, you have to have that many guys.
Baylor might be making the worst decision that I've ever seen anybody make in the Big 12.
Well, I mean,
to say, I mean,
not raping women would probably be the first.
I should say worse than anything they've done to date.
Welcome to Eddie and the podcast, Shinn.
No limit.
Oh my God.
Okay, whatever that means.
No limit soldiers.
But to sit there and say, okay, we're going to go to the Alabama model, which is control the game. Look, maybe that stuff can work against Texas Tech, who has no defense. That's not going to work. That's one of those things that I think could get your head kicked in by somebody like Texas, who shouldn't be able to kick anybody's head in.
It could in the Big 12, if you don't have a realistic chance of scoring 40 points in every game, you're going to lose probably a couple you should.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, and that's going to.
You'll lose to Iowa State or somebody like that.
Well, you're going to look up and you're going to be in a bunch of 20 to 17 games with 4 minutes left in the game, and if you don't make the plays you have to make in the last 4 minutes, you're going to lose every one of them.
It also feels like to do what they're trying to do, you have to have some badasses at offensive line and defensive line. And
yeah,
I maybe I'm just not paying attention to what they've been doing in Waco, but it doesn't seem like they have those guys to be able to do that.
What do they have, like 60 guys on scholarship now, Josh? Something like that?
Yeah, and that's the problem. I've always been a big proponent of OU going to something like this, but that's because OU's got, at any given year, the best or second best personnel in the league. I mean, that's just the way that's going to be. But for Baylor to do this, it's exactly what Eddie's talking about. You're going to have the best guys up front, and that's never what Baylor's going to have. And that's why Art Briles had so much success, because he negated that. He took out the need that our big guys are going to be better than your big guys, because he knew they weren't going to be.
Okay, I got us kind of off track there with the Baylor talk, but we were talking about Scott Pagano coming in, visiting this weekend. Rivals camp going down in Dallas this weekend. On Sunday, it's been moved indoors, which I don't like because it's going to make our video and photos crappy. But nobody cares about that. Josh, what are some of the highlights that you're looking forward to Sunday at Rivals camp?
Well, we really should have a really good group. I mean, obviously, I know everybody at this point knows all the in-state names. Really, with the exception of Bray Walker, who's got some family things he's tending to. He was planning to go, but I think at the last minute he's going to have to pull out. But, I mean, you look at guys like Ron Tatum, Josh Proctor, Patrick Fields, the OU commitment will be there. Jalen Redmond will be there. So, I mean, a lot of the in-state guys. Bryce Bray, who I saw at the Nike opening camp, taking home the O-line MVP against Bray Walker, and has since picked up that OU offer. So there are a lot of good in-state names. And the thing I'm really excited about is some of the 2019 guys like Grayson Boomer from Collinsville, Cole Mashburn from Norman North, the guy that picked up his first offer today, Demarion Houston from Millwood, the 2019 receiver that basically I stood on a table and screamed until Rivals put him in their first 100 for 2019. I think Demarion Houston's really, really good. I'm anxious to see him with some of these guys. But 2019 has a look of a really good group. And a guy that people need to go ahead and learn his name is Andrew Rame, 2020. That's right. He's just finishing his freshman year of high school. Offensive tackle from Broken Arrow. Started every game for Broken Arrow this year and is a guy that, their head coach, for those that don't know, is a former NFL offensive lineman, played at Tulsa, and he raves about the kid. He thinks he's going to be a great one. So he'll be there, and I want to see how he stacks up and if he's got a chance to be along those Bray Walker lines, one of those potential five-star kind of guys.
Where's this guy play on the line?
He's a tackle. He's probably, what I've been told, he's about 6'4", 260 right now as a high school freshman. I mean, he is, it wasn't the first time I heard from him. That's always one of the good clues for me is his coach calling me, or is it a coach that saw him calling me? And it was somebody that faced him in like week 2 and was like, Broken Arrow's got a freshman offensive lineman. You've got to see. And you turn on the tape, man. I mean, I think if more schools know about him and it wasn't always such a effort of kind of pulling teeth to get in-state guys their first couple of offers, I think he'd probably already have a couple. If he was in Dallas, if he was in the Metroplex, he'd already have 5, 6, 7 offers.
Seems like he goes along a lot further, too, when you're talking about a guy starting as a freshman at the state's largest 6A high school as opposed to starting at like Bethel or something.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If I'm telling you guys, he started, at Guthrie, well, okay, that's good. But BA, I mean, there's always going to be dudes at BA. And I think, Eddie, we've gone there for years. Broken Arrow does not have any size problems. They usually have plenty of big bodies.
Why would you piss off 5A? Why don't you go like Rush Springs or something?
I went Bethel.
Oh, Duncan, calm down, Duncan. There's no reason to be like this. So
I'm just saying. I mean, you took a bigger population. You took the former state capital of Oklahoma. So I got to be smart about this.
And as a little Sooner Scoop podcast note, the original home of Josh McCuistion was originally born in Guthrie.
Really?
So, yeah, I was born in Oklahoma City, but my parents' home at the time was in Guthrie.
Was it one of those historic buildings downtown?
Yeah, that must have been what drew them, that and the land so that they could have chows. They have pictures of me as a baby on these gigantic chows, which I think is illegal now, but at the time was perfectly fine.
What do you think about, okay, so Fields, Kelly, they've committed. The pressure is out there on Proctor. Tell us about kind of his path, what you see happening with him moving forward. Josh Proctor, I'm talking about, the safety from Owasso. See, Josh, I'm for the non-hardcore, I can see Shinn's eyes glazing over. So I'm trying to, I always do this with Josh. Not everybody knows everything. We've got to get all the details out. So Josh Proctor, he's a guy, just an aside story. You sent me out to a Westmore scrimmage one time, and that was the first time I saw Josh Proctor. Eddie, were you out there with me too?
Yes. Yeah.
I think you both went. Yep.
And we didn't know who he was, and Josh was just like, "You'll figure it out."
Yeah.
And so we go out there and see this gigantic specimen of a human being just standing above everyone else, and we're like, "Oh, that's probably an offensive lineman or something that's 200 pounds." And then he goes out there and lines up as a safety. I don't know, maybe he was playing some receiver. I can't remember. But we saw him move around. I was like, oh, okay, that's that kid. And from that moment on, that was 2 years ago?
I think he was going into his freshman year. It was the summer in between 8th grade and freshman, maybe.
Yeah. And he was our sophomore of the year, right, Josh?
He was.
And ever since then, I saw him at the Rivals camp last year, and I watched him, and he was just kind of timid. It's you could tell he didn't know if he belonged in a place like that. But he's from Owasso. He's a safety. OU has known him even before we went out there at that Westmore scrimmage. But that's the kid we're talking about. Go, Josh.
We should have a conversation with John afterwards of guys like myself, where we rank in comparison to the chainmail guys, the medieval fair, that have my sad knowledge base of high school recruiting.
Yeah, but I don't get the sense you're dressing up for this. So
it's they both probably have the same interest in little boys' hips, though.
Oh, I wish that wasn't true, Eddie. I wish I could get upset about that, but it is what it is. No. Anyway, so with Josh Proctor, I think he's become probably as interesting as any guy in the state, because I think with Ron Tatum and Jalen Redmond, you kind of feel like OU's out in front. They're probably in good shape. With Josh Proctor, I think Ohio State's a very real threat. He went up there and visited actually right before our national underclassmen combine in Atlanta last year, kind of somehow on the route to Atlanta. He went through Columbus, Ohio. I don't really know how that works, but he made the trip there. I think he really liked it. Ohio State's after him very hard, and I think with all the success of Urban Meyer, that's definitely caught his eye. But I don't think there's any question that if there was one coach that you said, who do you have the best relationship with, I think he would tell you Carey Cooks. They talk a lot. There's a very strong bond there, and I think he feels as though, really like a lot of these in-state kids the last couple of years, that Oklahoma wants them there, that there's something special they can do as kind of a group, and they know each other. He and Pat Fields are good friends. So there's a lot that works there. And I think if you had to pick right now, you'd probably pick Oklahoma. But I bet you Josh Proctor will take at least 2 or 3 official visits. He'll look around. He just doesn't strike me at all as a kid that's in a hurry.
Any kid that will be there that you really want to talk to just because you think he could commit soon to OU?
The one I think is really interesting, it's probably because I didn't get a chance to talk to him at the Nike camp, and that's Darrell Simpson, the big offensive lineman that's been to OU half a dozen times already, is very familiar as a guy that Bill Bedenbaugh offered not too terribly long after he offered Bray Walker, and it's always seemed like for Bray to be their future left, they want Darrell to be their future right tackle, and I think that's kind of what you're looking at. So I'm interested to see him, talk to him a little bit. There's been some talk, some rumors that OU is maybe approaching getting a commitment from him. I don't know how valid that is because, like I said, I haven't talked to him in a little while. So I just kind of want to take his temperature, see where he's at. And I think he could be one of the more interesting stories coming out of the camp.
Eddie, anybody in particular that you haven't seen in person that you're really looking forward to seeing?
Probably
Scoop HD lens on.
a couple of those 2019 kids, probably. I mean, I just think that, we've seen Mashburn do really well against 6A competition as a sophomore. I'd like to see him against.
Yeah, that'll be pretty cool getting to see him go against real offensive line. I mean, he's 6A, so
Yeah.
I mean, he was really good, I thought, in the state final last year.
No, he was. He was really good against Union both times they played him.
He's a guy that's so young. Like, I kind of, because we know JD so well and you're around the program and stuff, I mean, it's just, I don't think he realizes how good he is or can be. Like, I don't think, I mean, I was kind of talking about Proctor, it was kind of looked like he was in a shell a little bit last year at that thing. Like, I wonder how Cole will handle that. Because he's not at that meathead stage yet. I mean, like, Shinn knows this. Like, all defensive linemen and offensive linemen, no matter how old they get, they're all kind of meatheads still.
So most of
They
them,
just stay in meathead form for the rest of their lives, to some extent.
I think you have to drink your first 30 rack of Natty Lights before you can actually become a full meathead.
So I think Cole is really kind of still developing into a very aggressive football player, I guess is a nice way of saying it.
Yeah. And Demarion Houston, I just want to see him just in the fact that I only saw him for that one half against Millwood, and then I hopped over to the 6A title game. But it was I left, and I think Adair was up 10-3, and then after I left, it sounds like Millwood took over as Demarion Houston scored 4 touchdowns in that semifinal game. So I really want to see him play against really good competition.
Let me ask you this, Josh. I don't want to. I mean, there's no panic involved. I mean, I think we've all talked about the Cameron Rising thing. Any 2018 quarterbacks you'll keep an eye on that could be a plan B for OU down there?
None that I really have planned. Like I said, and I always go back to it, but with Cameron Rising, I just don't. Maybe it'll be to my own peril down the line. I just don't think there's a lot of concern there. I think Cameron's pretty aware that something could happen, and I think that's why he's taking some of these trips. But the bottom line is, as long as Lincoln Riley is the offensive coordinator, I don't see him going anywhere. And by the time Lincoln Riley could move on, I don't think it's an issue. So, no, I mean, there's not really anybody there I'll be watching. Now, there's some 2019 guys, for that next class. Grant Gunnell, that's already one of the favorites to be one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the entire country.
Yeah,
he'll be there camping. So, I mean, there's some guys like that are worth watching.
It's kind of time for Lincoln to get his 2019 quarterback. Is he running behind at this point?
Well, I mean, you think about it. Last year, about this time, was when you started to see OU move in that direction. And
I guess Robinson was at their satellite camp. He committed shortly after that.
Well, but that was going into his junior year.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, and Rising took his visit. Let's see. I want to say he came around camp last year, sometime in June or July, if I remember right, and then committed in, I think that was November, December, something like that. So, I mean, maybe more like October, somewhere in that ballpark. But, I mean, he's been committed for 6 months now. So it is. I mean, it's about that time to start looking at 2019 and deciding which direction they want to go.
All right. Well, Rivals Camp coming up over the weekend. Eddie be there. Joe's going to be down there taking pictures. By the way, we gave Joe the day off to replace him with Shinn. He was actually a little under the weather today, so we will be sending nurses to his house to make sure he's ready to go for the weekend. By the way, Eddie is in another wedding this weekend.
No, it's just a shower.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, the wedding. I mean, I wouldn't be making.
Only women go to showers. Are there groom showers now?
No, it's it's a couple's shower, I think. So, but if there was a wedding,
who are you taking with you?
Nobody. If it was a wedding weekend, I would not be making the Sunday Rivals Camp. We'll just put it that way.
What do you do with your +1s for weddings?
Usually drink for them. If you invite me to your wedding, you know what you're getting.
A man who's going to have too much to drink and try and take over the DJ.
So what you're saying is there's always a bunch of women at these who's asking their husbands, "Is Eddie coming?" Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, right. That's usually the way it goes.
Yeah, well. Eddie is that guy in his group.
He's not going to be smoking cigarettes inside, is he? Don't worry about it.
The good thing about that, though, is you can, if you're annoying, then women will try and set you up with women, so you'll have someone. So they won't be repeating this at your other friends' weddings or events and stuff in the future.
To reel you back in the future. Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
I had a buddy that literally had to escort another one of our buddies from his own wedding. Like, not
oh my God.
It was, I mean, like, this is my close group of friends, and one of them just got a little belligerent, and his wife, it's her wedding night. She's having her great time, and she's like, you need to tell him to leave. Like, he has to go. And so, like, he had to get a ride home, like, because, I mean, he was just in no shape to drive. It was a little ugly there between the guys and the girls in the group for a little bit.
I've never, I don't think I've ever had that problem, at least that I can recall or know of.
Eddie, like, you don't strike me as the guy that's going to get loud and boisterous and be a problem. Like, I feel like
I'm
your
not gonna be a
problems are going to be
problem.
deceptive. Like,
I'm not
you're
going to be a
like,
problem.
yeah. You're going to hit on a bride, like the bride's sister or something. Like, you're going to go in that direction.
I usually try to focus on the bride's mom.
Who is your shit break
I don't know who that is.
from American Pie? He's the one that. He's the one that went after Stifler's mom.
Yeah.
You comfortable with that?
Yeah, I don't do the. I don't know if I'm up with the Kama Sutra shit that he did in the like up in the, like with the Japanese book and all that stuff in American Pie 1.
By the way, Cameron Rising, August 7th was his commitment date.
Okay. Yep. Now, you remember that, but like, there's some stuff, Carey, that you just remember. It seems to stick in your brain, like, because you're always like, he committed quickly thereafter. And in my head, it was a while between. I don't know why I always feel like it was.
That's according
months,
to our database. That could be totally wrong. So.
Oh no, I mean, for whatever problems the Rivals database can have, I think that's usually fairly accurate. So I think you can trust that.
And there have been some omissions in the Rivals database here recently.
Oh, Eddie, is this time for airing of the grievances?
Let's hear him.
Well, I don't understand why Deji Kareem was put down as Putnam City West.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Do you think that somebody went in there and specifically did that?
Maybe.
To piss you off? And
Maybe. And he might have been a PC West graduate.
I think but who would have the access that would choose to do something like that?
I think this was an inside job by Josh McQuistion, is what you're saying.
I'm not saying, but I'm saying.
I can honestly say I wish I would have taken credit for it, and kind of now I wish I would have flipped Sam and then been like, I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, because it took him like it was the fastest query ever to go to Sam Bradford to make sure he was PC North.
I have it as my home screen, so I would have known. And and by the way, I think you guys can drink now because I just mentioned that.
I feel like there are so many things that we need to explain to John Shinn about this podcast, like Eddie's truther stuff.
Well, John, I hope you're aware of two things, and it's that, one, Stevie Wonder has been able to see for a long, long time, and two, the Earth could be flat.
The Earth could be flat.
Now it's could be.
Could be.
It could be.
It used to be was. Is it because of all the ridicule that Kyrie Irving and Shaq have taken?
No, it just there's been some omissions and
noted scientists right there. Yeah, but
there's some different things that have come up that would lead me to believe that there's a possibility the Earth could be round.
Other things, we love Lainey visits on the podcast. That's Josh's daughter. We have anything in store for that today, Josh? Are you going to try and make her talk?
No, like I said, I am not sure. There was some damage done last time when she came in here and to walk into, because I sit in my office, and when she walks through the doorway, she can kind of see me, but I'm behind my desk, and so she comes around, and that's about the time you guys heard her. And she looks at me, and she's smiling, and she's happy to see me. And then it was just like all of a sudden her face just went dark. Like she was like, I don't know what the hell that is. You look like an alien. I'm not coming. We couldn't get her to come back in here after the podcast was over.
Just because you're wearing headphones and have the microphone?
Yeah, she just didn't care for that look at all. And I've just got a pair of, over-the-ear headphones and my mic in my hand, and that's it. There's nothing.
Well, that's what you really want out of a podcast. You make some people laugh, and you traumatize a child.
Well, like I said, I have a method of parenting. It's called poor parenting. So I try to do as little as possible, and it seems to make her a better kid. So it's working out well so far.
Picturing that meme of that kid that walks into a room and immediately turns back around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what Lainey's going to look like when she walks in on Josh and Tiffany trying to make kid number 2.
Well, luckily she can't open doors yet, so we're safe. But that fear does go through my mind. The trauma that is inevitable.
All right. Anything else you guys want to hit on recruiting? You want to move to OU football, present day, spring football? Well, it's John Shinn's time to shine now. As I know he's been doing a great job. Stories have been fantastic, John, that you've been writing for us. I'll say this, just to kind of start things out. I don't know if it's hope or what, but I thought it was interesting when we had defense availability the other day, and I kind of heard this after their kind of mini scrimmage that they had, the first one, but you can tell like the defense still is pretty embarrassed by the overall season that they had a year ago, and just from what they've seen athletically, I think they're excited that they're getting more players in the program that can keep them from being so embarrassed.
Well, I mean, when you look back on last season, that was a bad defensive team up until the beginning of November. And then something changed.
Yeah, they got their asses handed to them in Lubbock.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was Lubbock and then Texas and TCU. I mean, it was just there were a lot of, go all the way back to Ohio State and Houston. I mean, there were just some embarrassing performances in there. But something changed in them in November, and I think it's like you say, I do think they're getting more athletic, but I also think mentality-wise something has finally clicked in with them. It may be
some attitude, maybe.
Well, I mean, just that it's you don't have to accept that you have to give up 6 touchdowns to whoever you play in the Big 12.
And you know what else is like? I think when Caleb Kelly emerging like he did, kind of lets them see like, okay, we have a 5-star on our team. Like we have a legitimate badass. Like this is what Alabama has, and now we have one of these guys, and I think they kind of rally around that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think when you add in the fact that, as much as they say that they don't pay attention to who they're recruiting and out there getting, I think when you bring in a 5-star and then all of a sudden he's starting by game, 8 or 9, it's like, I need to get my shit together. I'm not going to be
game 2, sons of bitches.
Well, I mean, but one of the other deals about Kelly is, you don't need 4 linebackers when you're playing Texas Tech. That's part of the deal with him. Then it got a little bit lucky when it got in November. Oklahoma State was running the ball more, meant he could play more, and Baylor was running the ball more, meant he could play more, and then that everything kind of clicked in for him. And then you go play Auburn in the bowl game, and that's a game tailor made for him.
Yeah. Well, and I think the secondary that wasn't really the problem, but getting pressure on the quarterback, I think it's smart what they're doing. Because they were getting no interior pressure on the quarterback at all. I mean, you look at even tackles for loss, disrupting a play. There was none of that going on up front. And I still don't think they're talented enough to make a ton of plays up there. I mean, they might just be gapping themselves into bigger gaps. I mean, like Ohio State, what they did to them was embarrassing. It was just, and that's what happens when you try and have Will Johnson play linebacker. I think they figured that out. But they're still not supremely talented on the defensive line.
No, and I think that's why, when you think about a Scott Pagano coming in, he would certainly help them, but they're still not there. They're still not where they need to be. And, I feel like a broken record talking about it, but just the lack of pressure, when you go back to that Texas Tech game even, their inability to get Mahomes down on the ground, probably you add in about, I wish I knew what the exact number was. I'd have to think it's over 250 yards in the air after he scrambled around and just found a guy open. There's only so long that you can cover a guy.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe 400 yards.
The thing I remember about Texas, they would one guy would get initial pressure and then whiff, and there was nobody else around.
Right.
And then you have all these, he's getting to spend 6 seconds looking for a guy, and you don't have to be that good a quarterback to pick somebody apart doing that.
The thing is, you don't get a Marvin Wilson. You don't get the big name at defensive tackle that can come and help. So, Pagano would be huge from that perspective. Because, Josh, don't you think all the guys on the defensive line they signed just need a year?
Yeah, I think if there was – we've talked a little bit about it. I think Troy James is the one guy that probably, if they had to, he could probably come in and play a role. Kind of like they were using Amani Bledsoe last year, just as a spot guy to give you guys, some time to rest, that kind of thing. But, yeah, you look at Tyrese Lott, Zach McKinney. You kind of go down. Isaiah Thomas clearly needs a year. They're guys that have potential. Mike Stoops raved about how talented, Isaiah Thomas is. But Isaiah Thomas is going to show up and probably weigh less than Kenneth Murray does right now. So, that kind of tells you where he's at. And he's got a big frame, and he'll fill out, but he needs time to do it. And this is just not a group of guys. And this is why a lot of these guys were either lower 4 stars or 3 stars, because they had to be about projection. They weren't guys that were just going to plug and play and be ready to go. So, I don't think there's any question these guys need a step up. And, Carey, to your point about last year, how much things changed, I was looking at the numbers. In 2015, they had 90 tackles for loss. Last year, it dropped to 68. That changes the script of an offense completely when you're making that many fewer plays.
Well, here's the other thing too, and I think offenses were able to adjust to this, basically kind of like Eric Stryker. They spent 2-3 years, knowing that Oklahoma used Eric Stryker a certain way, and then they used Obo the same way. And look, he's a really good player. He's probably, I'd say Okoronkwo is probably their 3rd best player on defense behind Kelly, and probably put Steven Parker up there because I just think he's 2nd or 3rd. But it's going to really help him having somebody else on the other side that is not really on the defensive line but a rush edge guy. Like DJ Ward, when he was on the line of scrimmage last year, he wasn't the other defensive end, even though it looked like it. They never had a rush edge guy on that other side. So teams could just roll away from Obo Okoronkwo if they wanted to. That's what that you go back and look at that Tech game. That's all that Mahomes did was roll out to his right, away from where Obo was.
Well, if you only got one pass rusher, it's pretty easy to scheme around that.
Yeah.
Unless you got that one pass rusher like Lawrence Taylor or something like that. But, you're right. And they need to get more pressure up the middle. They can't just let these easy pockets and easy rollouts continue.
I guess that's where, a guy like Mark Jackson comes into play this year.
Maybe. But, like Kenneth Murray, like you mentioned, you get an 11 guys, so it's probably going to take away some of your surprise element in the fall. But he's probably that one guy that's going to end up being the home run of this class.
Yeah, it just sounds like everybody...
The guy that maybe didn't know or expected out of him.
Yeah, everybody seems to talk about him as the guy, certainly in this early enrollee group, that will benefit the most from coming in.
Outside of that, it's going to have to be like a Rambo or a Lamb.
With Murray, that is the best and fastest freshman 15 I've ever seen. I saw him multiple times. He's a Houston area kid. I got to cover him a lot down here. I never saw him and thought he was more than 215 pounds. And now, and I saw the 230 stuff. I was like, no way, that can't be right. And then I saw the video, the Scoop HD and the pictures. He looks 230. He looks huge. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what good situation he fell into, but he looks great.
No, he does. He's got long arms. He doesn't have bad weight that I can tell.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in the shower or anything. But
well, we'll wait on the videos for that. They should be up by next week. That's the one thing, though, that when you were talking to Mike on Wednesday about Carey, was just in that when he watches practice, when you just go out there and look at the guys that they've brought in these last couple of recruiting classes, they're different than what they have been, just physically. And when you throw in a Kenneth Murray, when you throw in an Addison Gums, even Trey Sermon to a point.
Yeah,
they're bigger physically. They look like they
I mean,
look
Addison's
like guys.
not near a finished product. I mean, he's still skinny and long.
But they're getting like a lot longer at linebacker
Right.
than they had in I mean, there's no Dominique Alexander's in there. There's not that 6 foot.
Safety turn to linebacker.
Yeah.
Those guys aren't in there.
Yeah. I mean,
like John Michael Terry's a big, tall dude.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of that Jordan Evans model of, long, lanky guy. When in doubt, get the long, lanky guy.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to turn that guy that's already athletic and add weight, I would think, than the opposite of, bringing that safety in, turning him into a middle linebacker, and then hoping he grows 2 inches and gains 50 pounds.
See, with his last comment, Shinn's ready to cover recruiting, man. He's ready to go. That was it right there.
But, I mean, the other deals we talk about this, I've talked about this a lot. In OU's schedule, linebacker has to be the roughest spot to find guys because you need a 245-pound guy when you play Ohio State and when you play Kansas State. And then when you play Tech, you'd probably be better off with a 215-pound guy.
Yeah.
Playing those spots. And we all
They can backpedal.
Yeah, and we all know that you can't do that. So, I mean, it seems like more and more that is their hardest spot to project what you're going to need more often than not.
That's why guys like Nick Saban were so, and Brett Bielema, that's why they hate playing against up-tempo teams.
Yeah.
Because they can't.
Well,
I mean, Alabama could do that, but they're the only ones that could. I mean,
I think they're all right if they go up against like Auburn up tempo, who's it's up tempo, but they're still
a run, primarily a run game.
But when you got 4 receivers out there all the time,
although you know what, I'm gonna say Jarrett Stidham's gonna f some s up as Auburn's quarterback. I mean, he's gonna piss off some defensive coordinators around that league. Because I say what you want about Malzahn. I think the guy can coach. I mean, he can coordinate an offense, and that kid is good.
Look at what he took Auburn to the Sugar Bowl last year. Look at that offense.
Oh, that was terrible.
That was a dumpster fire of talent. There was nothing there.
But the SEC was also outside of Alabama a dumpster fire of a league last year.
Yeah,
you're right. You're right. That's absolutely true. But I mean, the thing that caught me, and I talked about it in one of our podcasts right after the bowl game, was people were saying Cameron Petway has already announced he'll be returning to Auburn for his next year. What planet did you think that guy was going to the NFL this year?
He
made that guy 1,000-yard back.
That dude is the worst tailback I've seen play in a football game. Like, he could be a great fullback. I mean, he might be a fullback in the NFL. That dude could not turn his hips and run in a different direction if you put him like in Forrest Gump's legs. I mean, it was awful.
Yeah, he
had absolutely no sideward mobility.
No, which makes you even more I mean, we kind of thought last year that the SEC was so terrible because of the lack of quarterbacks, but wasn't a very good defensive league either last year. And that, a guy like that putting up that kind of numbers kind of proved it.
Well, Shinn, I mean, you've worked on a lot of stories so far this spring game coming up next weekend. I'm curious, just kind of offensively, anything that's really stood out to you, and especially receivers, trying to lock in new guys there. I know you did a really good article on Jeffrey Mead talking about the deep ball, but running backs, wide receivers, I mean, that's really the big story this spring, isn't it?
Yeah, and the fact that outside of Rodney Anderson, you have a bunch of running backs you don't need to protect. I'm kind of interested to see what it's going to mean in the spring game. You've got a little bit more depth than they've usually had. I mean, and
an offensive line that can blow open some holes for you.
Yeah, and a defensive line that clearly needs work. I mean, how much do you let them bang away at each other a little bit more than you have in the past?
My favorite part of the week was Bob Stoops just pretty much shitting all over the spring game.
Did.
Like, we're going to have this on Saturday for the fans, but the main scrimmage, the one that we're going to get everything out of it for the spring, that's going to be the week after, and we'll be closed to the media.
Well, I mean, I guess they've settled up in on this date. Masters weekend, OU's going to have a public scrimmage, no matter what.
Yeah, maybe it said more that this is the spring game date is more a marketing department decision than a football decision.
Well, yeah, they've settled in on the second Saturday in April for some reason. I don't know
disgusting.
why.
And Eddie is going to go on a rampage about it.
Well, it just doesn't make sense why everybody should spend their Masters Saturday when half of the country is spending their day drinking and watching the Masters at Masters parties across.
You have all day Sunday to do that.
Masters doesn't begin until the back nine on Sunday, Eddie.
It does for the Saturday festivities when friends are throwing Masters parties. I guess
Eddie, if it was another Saturday, would it just be there's a baseball game on Saturday party?
No, it'd be.
That feels like a good excuse just to have a party.
It's kind of like the Kentucky Derby. I mean, there's certain reasons to throw a day party, and that is one of them.
All right. Well, I'm not going to judge. I've had World Cup parties, and I know you wouldn't throw that party, so I'm not going to judge your Masters parties.
You'll get home in plenty of time.
Maybe.
Hey, one thing I wanted to ask
you want me
Eddie.
to pay for an Uber for you so you can just start drinking as soon as you get out of the press conference?
No, I might just drink at the press conference.
I'll give you $10. You wear a green jacket.
I have a green jacket. I do have one of those.
But the receivers, Shinn, I mean, they got the Jeff Badette kid. They're in trouble if Marquise Brown can't be at least a starter for them, don't you think?
I don't know if he's got to
unless Michael Jones steps up or something.
I find it hard. They keep talking about, the strength of the group is the group, not one standout guy. That never works. I mean, when I was talking to me,
when has this offense ran when you don't have a standout guy?
Yeah. Now, last year we had no idea D.D. Westbrook had that in him, but it also, it took a month for him to really get going.
And you know what else? Just like that Auburn game, when they had Joe Mixon to kind of cover up for some of that stuff and be a little outlet and stuff.
Yeah.
He covered up a lot of issues that they had by not having a deep receiving core last year. They're not going to have that next year.
That's just, I guess, where you have to have a guy like I've kind of bought in with Mark Andrews. He's definitely not going to be the guy that beats anybody over the top. But at the same time, I mean, can Baker Mayfield not engineer an offense to just nickel and dime everybody, or do they have to have a guy that spreads everything out?
Or do they just play bigger next year? Do they make Mark Andrews and Dimitri Flowers, are they on the field 75% of the time as opposed to 40 and 50, and do they just run the ball and try to play action off of it?
Is that where they're hinting at throwing everything at Grant Calcaterra during the spring to see if he can handle that type of workload? Seriously.
I don't think Lincoln Riley's really had to. I don't know. It's not that it's been difficult, but at times they've had to fight him to get him to run it more on offense. I mean, that first year after they lost to Texas, and you realize, Baker got sacked all those times, and they had no run game, and you just turned it into a 7-on-7 game, and it was terrible. And after that, then he finally started utilizing the run game this last year, and he started going to the two-back sets with Mixon and P. Ryan at the same time, and that worked really well. He's evolved a lot as a coach. I don't think he's evolved to the point where he's ready to just be like Gus Malzahn's offense that we saw last year, where you barely throw. You've got Baker Mayfield. You've got to throw the ball.
But, he's not going to have Baker Mayfield out there running it anymore.
That's what I'm just saying. They're not going to go, big heavy. I mean, they're going to throw. They'll go down with Jeffrey Mead and, Dahu Green and Marquise Brown, whoever. I mean, Mike Hill, they'll go down with those guys before they just make it the Dimitri Flowers, Mark Andrews show.
I think there's a better chance of at least one of those three big guys, whether it be Mead, Dahu, or A.D. Miller, having a better year than all three of them just sucking.
Well, and I'm leaving out the Badette kid too. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could. I mean, if those guys really suck, he'll start next year.
Yeah.
And they had a hell of a wide receiver recruiting class coming in. So
yeah, Lamb and Rambo.
You got to figure you got to figure those guys aren't redshirting.
But I mean, one of the best young receivers I'd ever covered, I thought, was Malcolm Kelly. It wasn't like he could instantly come in and just be a huge factor. It took him half the season.
Yeah.
And a shitty Kansas team in Arrowhead Stadium before he actually. What was the first year you started covering the team, Shinn?
2004.
Oh, so that was your second year on the beat then.
Yeah, but, I'll say this in Kelly's defense. I mean, Rhett Bomar was not Sam Bradford in terms of accuracy.
No.
He threw a gorgeous ball, but he was not ready at that point to run any kind of, ball control passing offense.
And he didn't get to start that season. You know, he didn't get all the reps, and he was in a quarterback competition with Paul Thompson.
Working too
hard.
But
but Malcolm Kelly, it took him a while to be in it, and he was a big, tall, rangy receiver that was more talented than most people. So I'm not saying it can't happen. I mean, Kenny Stills played as a true freshman and picked it up, I almost want to say easily, for a true freshman anyway. I mean, he was a big factor as a freshman, and you don't see that very often. He might be the best ever. I mean, the numbers I'm sure back it up. I think we've had this discussion before. Like, he is your number one true freshman impact player at wide receiver for Bob Stoops.
Probably, but
like Mark Clayton redshirted.
But the thing I remember about Kenny Stills is at no point were they asking him to be the number one receiver.
Yeah,
never really asked him to do that until Broyles got hurt at the end of that season. And
Malcolm Kelly was asked to be the number one receiver. Yeah,
yeah, almost from the get. I mean, because when Kelly came in, they were depleted at receiver from what they had lost from 2003 and 2004.
They'd lost Mark Clayton,
Brandon Jones,
what's his name? Punt fumbler, Mark Bradley. Yeah.
I mean, it was just a different deal.
All right, I think we're good on the podcast for today. Josh, good luck in Dallas, keeping Eddie and Joe under wraps. Joe, if you're listening, get better. See, I think Joe thinks I'm the heartless bastard because I just don't ever talk to him. Like when he's here, which is probably not good. Eddie can tell you this. Shinn can tell you this stuff. I'm just not a talker. Like, if there's nothing to talk about, I just don't say anything. It's not that I don't like you. It might be that I make you.
I think everyone thinks you're the mean one.
I think that's shit.
Between us. I think everyone has this impression that you're the bad guy, and I would readily say you're probably a nicer and better person than I am. I just put on a better show.
Yeah, you are kind of fake.
A little bit fake. Yeah, there's some fakeness there for sure.
Shinn, it was good having you on the first podcast.
Good to be here.
In our beautiful Sooner Scoop studios, surrounded by my hoarder lifestyle.
The motherboard.
Mothership. Did you say shit just to say shit because it's the end of the podcast?
No, I said ship.
Okay. Shinn, you didn't get to say shit today. Do you want to say shit?
No, I'll save the cursing for future days.
We bleep F's, though. Joe's the only one to actually drop an F-bomb on the show, which was a total upset. Yeah. Like, if anybody was ever going to drop an F-bomb, it wasn't going to be the guy with a man bun.
Well, I thought that was the whole deal with podcasts. I mean, there were no rules.
Yeah, but we have our own standards.
Rules inside the rules. It's an unwritten rule. It's like a baseball game.
There's like sons of pastors that listen to this and stuff.
And those are the crazy ones. Sons of pastors.
Those were always the wild kids at my school.
No doubt.
Well, bleeping it's just as funny as hearing it live. So.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40. Yes, we did get one in this week. I thought Josh had a little bit of yell talking today when he got going on his recruiting.
Oh, no.
We give Josh a hard time about yell talking.
I hope everyone out there is drinking accordingly. That's part of the game.
Here, I want to play Shinn some of the yell talking stuff before we get out of here. Just
while you're getting that set up, I implore everybody to go ahead and do some due diligence and check out the Coastal Carolina cheerleading story. It's interesting.
I think this is recycled. I thought.
Really?
I don't know. So here's a little bit of Josh yell talking.
When my brother lived in Oklahoma City, we would go to Norman, and every time I went to Norman, and every time I went to Norman West, and maybe that's what it was. But you were saying before we started, this is the first time for you in a while that it's kind of felt real. Why?
Well, I think because the two major parties, which, I think we all accept, are the Big 12 decision makers, Texas.
See, like, he gets in his car and he's on his. Do you think you were on your Bluetooth at that point, Josh?
Probably. And, what is the protocol on that? I'm never sure if I'm supposed to just go straight to my phone and take the Bluetooth off, or if
on
it's
radio,
better. I don't know which is which.
You don't want to be on Bluetooth because it can lead to really horrible sounding audio.
Okay.
But you were on a podcast.
I knew you'd have a take.
And so we said, that reminds us of something, Josh.
How dare you? I have a voice-related medical condition. I suffer from voice immodulation. I'm unable to control the pitch or volume of my voice. Also known as Van Orton syndrome. VI is a recognized psychomedical condition that you may have read about in Newsweek or Cracked magazine.
But it's like, and I don't know, Josh, do you think that now that we've shamed you that you're not yell talking anymore when you do interviews? I think it still happens
because I'm more mindful of it, and it's not a. I don't like you talk to me in person. I'm not like that in person. I'm not particularly loud or anything like that. I just get on a roll, and I don't know if I just build to a crescendo or what it is, but I just
you zone
always
out.
seem to get
you
louder.
Zone out.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like when you go to your database in your head and you have to start pulling out these names of kids. It's like even boring for you.
Yeah, sometimes.
Kind of like when you do it like this.
What is interesting about it is that the two seem, and it's all reading tea leaves because obviously Oklahoma and Texas are very keen.
I mean, that was on our podcast. Like, you were among friends and you were just yelling.
See, now, here's the other thing that Shinn doesn't know. I can't hear any of these.
Yeah, I know. We screwed up the
thing. I don't even know
thing.
what you're talking about.
See, like, Josh can't hear this right here.
I'll tell you what's not fair. Imagine being at a high school dance, singing along with everyone else, and a little bit softer now, and a little bit softer now, and a little bit softer now.
But see, what's great, Josh, is now you can go back and listen, and it'll be like it's going to be new to you. You won't know what was done.
Well, see, and I've always wanted to have this conversation. I think I'm the only one of the four of us. I listen to this every week. Like, I go back and listen, like, every time. I think I'm the only one that does.
After you get done, will you please rate and subscribe to Soonerscoop.com?
Yes, do that.
Or to the podcast.
And maybe Josh is the one that's always complaining. Maybe he's getting new iTunes accounts and complaining on our reviews about you should let Josh talk more.
I think we know that's not the case.
I know
either that or Tiffany's doing it.
Now that I would believe. Like, she gets on the board sometimes, and I have to kind of pull her back from going off on people.
I have buddies at the local music store that are huge Josh fans, and they want me to pass along messages to Josh every time I go there.
One of my best friends listens to the podcast and is always like, man, you guys are all like, he loves Eddie. Eddie's his guy. I think if he liked me, he could never give me the
buy
credit.
some t-shirts.
Eddie's his guy.
Should we make some Eddie t-shirts?
Yeah. Let's do it.
If we make you sign like a waiver,
print them up
that we have power of attorney over your life.
Talk to my lawyers.
Well, and how will this impact his mayoral run?
My lawyer is my roommate, so
okay.
Eddie signs over his merchandising rights for like a sandwich.
If I was hungry enough, I might do it.
Like a really
drunk enough,
like a just a decent sub,
like a New York steamer at
those are
Firehouse.
That'd definitely be better than a Cleveland steamer.
By the way, Firehouse, if you would like to be our podcast sponsor, we love your sandwiches.
Yeah.
I should have got a New York steamer the other day. Instead, I got a Reuben at Vans. It wasn't very good.
I'm with Eddie. I can't really handle this sandwich's name. We're going to have a talk about this.
Someone. Okay.
I'm glad somebody got it. I'm glad somebody got it.
Somebody. We were talking about Better Call Saul. I don't know if any of you guys watched that. That's like the follow-up series or the prequel to Breaking Bad.
I loved Breaking Bad. Awesome. Could not get into Better Call Saul.
We were talking about the scene where he explains, the Chicago sunroof. Do you know what I'm talking about, Josh?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so someone told me to go look up Alabama Hot Pocket on Urban Dictionary. Don't do it. Do not do it. It is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Chicago sunroof is just taking a dump in somebody's sunroof.
Tonight, Urban Dictionary is going to be like, we got a lot of hits on Alabama Hot Pocket from Oklahoma today. I wonder what the hell that's about.
It is aptly named, though.
Oh, God.
So raise your hand if you think you're going to go look it up anyway. Don't do it. Eddie,
I already did.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Don't read it. Don't.
It's pretty disgusting.
It's gross. All right. On that note, Alabama Hot Pocket, you will never be a show sponsor. Thanks to Josh McQuistion, who is back from his home base, Eddie Radosevich, John Shinn in studio. We broke your cherry, John. Congratulations. You're no longer a podcast virgin. That's going to do it. Until next time, when we see you right back here on the Unofficial 40 podcast.